Once that's live, there we go. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you very much for joining this evening. It's December 1st, Tuesday, and we are continuing our sessions on Zoom at ISKCON of New Jersey in Towaco. And today we had a very successful Giving Tuesday fundraiser. It's that little temple back there behind me. Construction already started, and we had, I think we raised much more than $30,000 in just first hour alone. So we're doing pretty well this morning. So thank you all for this. Quite a few of our donors are on this channel as well. So thank you all for your contributions, and everybody who attends also are contributing by giving a moral support and supporting this channel. And hearing, and that's really the most auspicious thing. So thank you all for your good wishes and your good vibes. So today it gives us great pleasure and it's our distinct honor to welcome again on our channel His Grace Sesa Prabhu. So as you all know, His Grace Sesa Prabhu is one of the leaders of our movement. So as GBC, is serving as the Global Minister for Justice, Minister for Education, and many, many other very major services. And he'll be broadcasting live today from Alachua, it's in Florida. And so today's topic is a very special one. It is Gita Principles, a Vaishnava Worldview. Very interesting topic, and we look forward eagerly to hearing from Sesa Prabhu. So thank you very much, Sesa Prabhu, and handing off to you. Haribol.
Thank you very much, Madan Gopal Prabhu, and all the devotees of ISKCON, New Jersey. It's good. I'm very happy to spend some time with you again. And we'll be discussing an interesting topic, interesting to me at least, ways in which we see the world. Sometimes they're quite different than the way non-devotees see the world. So we're going to explore that. But we'll begin by chanting Mangala Acharanam, and then we'll do a verse from the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Text number 30. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamala Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sakujatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Alita Shri Vishnukam Cha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Govesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hare Priye. Panchakalpa Trubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, text number 30. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vachasaknom yavastatum brahmativa chame manaha nimittani chapashyami viparitani keshava. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune, O Krishna, killer of the Keshi demon. Purport. Due to his impatience, Arjuna was unable to stay on the battlefield, and he was forgetting himself on account of this weakness of his mind. Excessive attachment for material things puts a man in such a bewildering condition of existence Bhayam viva neshata shat. Bhagavatam 11:237. Such fearfulness and loss of mental equilibrium take place in persons who are too affected by material conditions. Arjuna envisioned only painful reverses in the battlefield. He would not be happy even by gaining victory over the foe. The words nimittani vibritani are significant. When a man sees only frustration in his expectations, he thinks, why am I here? Everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in the Supreme Self. Arjuna is showing ignorance of his real self-interest by Krishna's will. One's real self-interest lies in Vishnu or Krishna. The conditioned soul forgets this and therefore suffers material pains. Arjuna thought that his victory in the battle would only be a cause of lamentation for him. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this verse is from the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure you're all familiar with the situation. What's actually happening here is that Arjuna is having his worldview challenged. You recall the arguments he gives to Krishna why he doesn't want to fight in the battle, take part in the battle. Things like the women would become polluted because so many men would be killed in the war. Then there'd be unwanted progeny. That progeny would destroy society in different ways. All religious functions would stop because of this. He was foreseeing all this. He was foreseeing things which were contrary to the worldview in which he had grown and thrived and lived his whole life. He saw all of that changing significantly, and it was something that caused him to be disheartened. He didn't want to participate in that. He couldn't see a role for himself. In other words, his worldview was being challenged. So what is a worldview? Well, dictionary definition, it's a particular philosophy of life or a conception of the world that one may possess. And it may be a conception that encompasses a wide range of societal activities, something like a king would see and be responsible for, and which Arjuna had, envisioning the Vedic culture that he knew so well. Or it may be much more simple than that. It may be something that affects our personal outlook on life and our assets or our abilities. I one time had the opportunity to visit a junkyard where they take all the cars and things from they're in accidents or they get old and are useless. They take them to the junkyard. They pile them up one on top of another there. So I was there at that junkyard waiting for a devotee to get a part to a car or something. So I was talking with the owner, and I was saying to him with some disdain, "You got a lot of junk here." But then he gave his worldview in response. I really couldn't say anything to him. He said that, "I don't see this as junk. All these wrecked cars and auto parts, I don't see this as junk, but I see it as a fortune because I can sell each little part from each car and make a lot of money." So that was his view of the world. That was his conception. He and I were looking at the same thing, but because we had different worldviews, different conceptions of the world, and the small circumstances in which we were in, there was completely discord between our views. And so, sometimes these conflicting worldviews are more, let's say they're deeper than just a junkyard full of old wrecked cars. But today I was listening to a tape and I heard talk about the sati rite and how Gandhari followed her husband. There was a verse describing the glories of Gandhari near the end of the chapter when Bhishma Dev leaves this world. And it was describing the great qualities of this woman and how she entered into the fire of her husband of Dhritarashtra and committed sati in that way. And it was presented as a very glorious thing. And indeed, it is a glorious thing. We know from descriptions of in the Vedic literatures that when ladies are faced with living life without their husband, the fire is a lesser evil than living without their husband. So their worldview makes sati possible. Of course, Prabhupada quickly pointed out that that's degraded in this Kali Yuga because it's something that is forced. He calls it obnoxious. It's forced. It's not the worldview that one has, but it's one in which one is being subjected to. And so therefore it's not allowed in this Kali Yuga because the worldview, the necessary worldview, the social understandings, the social interaction, all the things which comprise a worldview. If one element is missing, then there can be wide disagreements about how to proceed. And so in this verse and in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita particularly, Arjuna's worldview is being challenged. And Prabhupada explains in the purport two reasons, two things that make the worldview, that affect one's worldview. He says first that persons who are too affected by material conditions, if we're too affected by material conditions, seeing ourselves as a product of matter, and seeing good and evil in terms of the body, then we'll be subjected to a false or misleading worldview. This is what Arjuna was facing. He was too affected by the material conditions. At least he's showing like that. Prabhupada makes the point in the purport here that Arjuna was doing this by Krishna's will to teach others. And so he was faced with the situation of being too affected by family relations, and therefore his worldview was different than Krishna's worldview. And that's what had to be rectified by Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita. So first thing, too affected by material conditions. And the second thing is being interested in one's own welfare. Prabhupada says here in the purport, everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in the supreme self. And so these two things, being affected by material conditions and interested in your own welfare, these two things cause us to create and envision false worldviews, or worldviews different than explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So throughout the Bhagavad Gita, this theme runs, and how Arjuna is pictured here as being as being reluctant to fight because of the worldview he foresaw, and his agreeing to fight at the end of Krishna's instruction in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna's arguments changed his worldview back to those of the interest of the Supreme Self, and not one's own personal interest. So this is the cause of suffering, when we concoct our own worldviews and forget about Sri Krishna's worldview. It's not that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not a person, or who doesn't have preferences or ideas about how society should be organized and executed and all the duties of man. Krishna is the teacher of all these things. In Bhagavad Gita, he says in the Gita that he's the knower of the Vedas. He's the compiler of the Vedas. So he has his own ideas about how things, what the world should be like and how it should function. And our responsibility is to come in line with that, not be rebellious and have our own ideas, our own concocted ideas about what the world should look like and function. So a worldview affects three things. This type of vision we're talking about, it affects how we act, our deeds, and it affects our overall character. And so vision, deeds, and character are three things which change by Krishna's instructions in the Bhagavad Gita. And that is the cause of the ending of our suffering, by coming in line with that. Our own worldviews do nothing but perpetuate our suffering in this material world. And so how to overcome that, and how to live, and how to align our vision, deeds, and character in line with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the subject matter found in Bhagavad Gita. So I want to present to you this evening a worldview document that myself and some other devotees have been working over the last couple of years to make a concise statement based on Bhagavad Gita and principles of Bhagavad Gita, to make a concise statement about what is a Krishna conscious worldview, especially for society, the world here and now. We live in a society that is far from accepting a worldview where the sati right is accepted, whereas even less extreme examples of a different worldview are seen. But how does the Bhagavad Gita and eternal scripture relate to and construct a worldview that we can live, we can preach, and we can convince others to accept? So we've been working on documents called Gita values or Gita principles, and it focuses on 6 values or principles which can help us to form a worldview in line with Lord Krishna's worldview. Now I do have, if I could share the screen, I could okay. Do you see that now?
Yes, bro, we can see it.
Okay. So just a little background about the Gita values. Again, they're focused on governing our vision, our deeds, and our character by the principles presented by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna to cure his disease of having a false worldview. Now, they're all based in and governed by bhakti, or loving devotional service to Krishna. And they're a way that we can develop our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with all living beings, and the environment in which we live. So that's a pretty tall order when you consider trying to get a short document. It's almost like a catechism, something that we can all recite and be aware of. It's a pretty tall document given the extensive teachings we find in Bhagavad Gita. And so at the beginning, I want to just make it clear that this is not something that's meant to say it's a final, absolute, there are no other Gita values. No, it's 6 principles which are part of a document that could be a sister document with many others. Indeed, higher stages of Krishna consciousness have many other defining worldviews, ideas, things that shape people's lives, great devotees' lives, that we may get a chance at the end to, if we have some time, we can go over them briefly, just another set of them. But for now, 6 Gita principles. First one starting with Samadarshana, or equal vision. This idea of equality in the material realm is often based on very superficial characteristics. Therefore, we find people claiming equality based on bodily designations or based on political ideologies. So when we talk about Samadarshana or equal vision, we're speaking about the nature of the soul. That is where real equality lies. And if we don't want to get tripped up by inconsistencies in equality, then we need to stay away from material designations as a basis for equality. Krishna teaches this principle. You all know the verse, Vidya Vinaya Samparani Brahmani Gavi Hastani. It's quoted here on the screen. A wise sage sees spiritual equality in that way. And actually, if you think about it, this is a redefining element that brings human dignity or dignity on the basis of, as it makes that as a natural basis of civilization, not material differences. How material differences can be overcome and have one aim is the aim of Bhakti Yoga, and it's an aim enunciated by Krishna with this principle of Samadarshana. So the next of the 6 is Ichcha, or choice. The choice or the vision of a worldview, a consistent worldview, a Krishna conscious worldview, would have to be involved with recognizing the individual choice of the living entity. It can't be something that's dogmatic or pushed down everyone's throat or demanding in any way, because we know from studying Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures that the living entity has his own choice. And by executing that choice as an individual, he can choose three things, or at least among other things, at least three things. He can choose the relationship with Krishna. He can choose his relationship with Krishna. It's an individual matter. His service to Krishna and his responsibilities in that service. And so this key element to a worldview is extremely important because we are individual spirit souls. Krishna says in the Gita, Sanatana, eternally, we have our independence. Neither do we become the Supreme Lord, neither do we merge in and lose our individuality. And so how to utilize that choice becomes the teachings of the Gita, teaching Arjuna to make the right choice, and doing so with affection. So the second is ichcha, or choice. These are building blocks of a vision exemplified by Krishna, by Arjuna, when he says at the end of Bhagavad Gita that nasta moha, my illusion is gone, and he agrees to fight. So we'll go to number 3 here. Ahimsa. If we are to have a worldview, then we have to have some guidance on how to interact with others in that worldview. We're not alone. Krishna is never alone. He's always surrounded by his loving devotees. And we're always anxious to associate with Krishna. It's not that we're alone. So how we interact with others, the Supreme Lord, as well as other living entities, must be governed by a worldview of Vaishnavism. And so we find that basic characteristic in this third Gita principle, ahimsa, or without harm. It actually establishes, in a broader sense, the welfare of others as the basis for interaction. There are a couple of interesting aspects of the description you see on the screen that talk to this idea of interacting with others with welfare in mind. It says here, the harm of offering cruel words to others. So what is violence toward others? It can be many things, of course, we understand. But I think it's very interesting that in our discussions, we came up with this idea of employing cruel words or harm of offering cruel words to others as the essence of violence that needs to be controlled by this interactive principle of ahimsa. Maybe we've had our own experience, all of us, about how cruel words have such a hard effect on the living entity. I think there are many stories in Mahabharata, for instance, where just some cruel words shape a person's entire life. Usually it's a life that's involved with physical harm to others that begins with cruel words. So control of the tongue, and particularly austerity of speech, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, all go into this idea of ahimsa, not harming others. Now, it's interesting that another aspect of this ahimsa is it's considered violence if we withhold knowledge or insight from others. We are meant to benefit each other. The idea of interaction in society is for the welfare. And what is the highest welfare taught by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita? Sarvadhamam prachaja mamekam saranam bhajam. To know Krishna, to hear from Krishna, to know Krishna, and to surrender unto him. If we really want to practice nonviolence, ahimsa, not harming others, then we're obligated in our interaction with them by our thoughts, words, and deeds, by our vision, deeds, and character. We are required to interact in a way which is helpful or beneficial to them. So that is a bit on ahimsa. So we'll move to the next. Acharya, or teaching by example. So if we are to lead others, and Vaishnava should be in a position of leading others in society, with the torchlight of knowledge in front of the crowd moving forward, are Vaishnavas, teaching pure devotional service. So if we are to lead others, then we have to know something ourselves. We have to be something ourselves. What we're teaching, we must already be, we must possess. And in this regard, there's a story that Srila Prabhupada told about a guru and a young boy who ate too many sweets. Apparently, this young boy was very, very fond of rasgulla, sandesh, rabri, so many sweets. But this distressed his mother very much. And so she thought, I have to teach this boy a lesson now when he's young so that his life doesn't become ruined, that our dental bills will become out of sight. So she thought, I'll take him to the guru and have the guru tell him not to eat sweets. So she took her son to the guru, told him the situation. And the guru looked at the boy and said to the mother, come back in 1 week's time. And then he fell silent. Mother couldn't quite understand what was happening, but she followed the instruction of the guru and came back in 1 week's time and presented the boy before the guru. And so the guru looked at the boy, looked at the mother, and said to the boy, looking him straight in the eyes, don't eat too many sweets. And then he fell silent. The mother was a bit dumbfounded. That's all? That's all you're going to say? And then the guru looks at her and said, well, I asked you to come back after 1 week because I was eating too many sweets. And I can't teach if I don't lead by example. So therefore I needed some time where I stopped eating too many sweets, and therefore I could instruct your son. This is the point. Acharya means teaching by example, not just that we give philosophy and don't follow. If we're to lead others, we have to be worthy of that lead and teach by example. Very, very important principle in terms of how our worldview is shaped. If you look at those films that were produced by Yadavar and Vishaka Prabhus, they have a section in there that's on the Gurukula in Dallas. And Satyarup Maharaj is in the film speaking about the principle of Acharya, or teaching by example, from the very beginning of life, on the segment of the film that deals with Gurukula, Prabhupada starting the Gurukula. So from the very beginning, There's a need for so many acharyas who can teach by example, and in that way perfect the benefit of interacting with others in a society with a worldview-based consciousness. So let's go to the next one. Humility. There's a nice quote by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur about humility and how one can lead one's life or should lead one's life based upon it. There's a document called Words from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and it's a list of 20-odd sayings that he had, which encapsulated his teachings by example as an acharya. But he says in terms of humility that look within, amend yourself rather than pry into the frailties of others. In this world of Maya, averse to the Lord, full of trials and tribulations, only patience, humility, and respect for others are our friends for Hari Bhajan. So he's describing a world of Maya. What's the worldview? It's averse to the Lord and full of trials and tribulations. What's the antidote? Patience, humility, respect for others. It's so very important that we embody this quality of humility. And again, it's not just an artificial external exercise, but it's based on understanding. Krishna teaches in Bhagavad Gita that what are the qualities, or what is knowledge? What is knowledge? And one of the very first items of knowledge is humility. So it's based on understanding, not just external circumstances or external show. But it's actually a quality of the soul where one is not anxious to be honored by others. So for our self-improvement, for understanding our emotions, for understanding our role in the greater scheme of things, humility is the key to opening up all those things for us. And a society based on not being proud of what one can do without God, but rather with one based on being completely dependent upon the Supreme Lord. Two very different worldviews here. Which is going to be more successful? Well, we have to take Krishna's instruction and actions in Bhagavad Gita and why he wanted Yudhisthira on the throne. Because a man like Yudhisthira, steeped in knowledge and humility, is a fit person to lead the worldview of Vaishnavas in the world. So the last of these six, and again I point that these are six only, not that this means the all in all of everything, but there are other considerations, other qualities that our group considered and went over, but we felt that these six were the most important for us, at least. And so the final one that we chose to include on our list was priti, or affection. Actually, affection is the motivating principle behind all of the other Gita principles or values that are described in this document. We know that Krishna says that it was because of Arjuna's love for him that he explained the science of Bhagavad Gita to him. And we know that by cultivating knowledge without devotion is an incomplete path. So priti, or affection, is the motivating principle, the nourishing principle behind all of our actions in a worldview, in a Vaishnava worldview, based on these six principles. Think about it, about our ability to be compassionate. A Vaishnava is compassionate to others because he has received the compassion of the Supreme Lord, particularly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So our ability to be passionate and tolerant is actually nourished by affection. And our preaching efforts are meant to create a loving reciprocation for all the living entities with the Supreme Lord. That is the ideal worldview, where everyone is a surrendered soul unto the Supreme Lord, and where everyone is happy and joyful. So therefore, Prabhupada could say and encapsulate, he was so wonderful at this quality of being able to encapsulate the entire Krishna conscious philosophy in a short phrase that was relevant to his audience. He taught the hippies in New York City in 1966, stay high forever. It gave them a whole understanding, a different understanding of the world in which they're at, and gave them the strength to give up false worldviews or false materialistic enjoyment and stay high on spiritual activities. So many statements he made like that. He was able to relate it based on motivating his followers with a loving sentiment exchange. There's another example from the life of Satrup Das Goswami, where Prabhupada taught this principle of priti, or affection. Apparently, Steve didn't go to the first initiation, although it was advertised and he was with the devotees from the very beginning. But for some reason, for that first initiation Prabhupada held, he didn't go. He remained home and did service given to him by Prabhupada of typing Prabhupada's manuscripts. And so when he brought them the next day to Srila Prabhupada, he came, knocked on the door, I brought this work, and Prabhupada asked him, said, you didn't come yesterday. Why didn't you come? Satrup Maharaj, to be, Satrup Das, to be, just hung his head, and then Prabhupada said these words, which are so powerful and which characterize his interaction with all of us. He said, if you love me, I will love you. Completely changed the life of Satrup Maharaj, Satrup Das Goswami, and resulted in years and years, decades of loving service to Srila Prabhupada and Krishna in a Krishna conscious worldview. So this priti is so important. It ties down and nourishes all the others. So these are 6 elements of a worldview based on Krishna's teachings in Bhagavad Gita. And if we adopt them, we'll accomplish what a worldview is actually meant to do. Everyone has a particular worldview, just like my friend in the junkyard. He was thinking, I will become happy through all of this junk. Everyone has a worldview, an idea how they will become happy. But without Krishna, they can never achieve their goal. But for the Vaishnava, even if he makes just a little progress on this path, that is never lost and is eternally relishable. So there's no reason why we should hesitate to embrace a worldview, even though it may be different from everyone around us. Even though the person next to us on the train we're going to work one day may have a completely different idea of what's going on in his mind than a devotee may have. But don't be fooled just by numbers. There may be a lot of foolish people. That doesn't mean that they know and that their so-called worldview should be accepted. These principles, samadarshana, icha, ahimsa, acharya, amanitva, and priti, these 6 building blocks can change your life, can change society, make this place heaven on earth, make it Vaikuntha by everyone loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now I see we have maybe just a couple of minutes before any reflections or questions you may have. I'll just mention to you a deeper level of the worldview. It comes in 6 parts, just like the 6 parts we examined here from the Gita. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung Saranagati, or songs of surrender. And in there, he describes 6 ways of surrender through Saranagati, which also give a worldview. Now, this worldview may be more often seen amongst sannyasis or very advanced devotees, but they are a worldview indeed, because they form the way in which we see these great devotees relating with the world, mostly in terms of renunciation. So the 6 ways are dainya, humility, atmanivedana, dedication of the self, goptrip trivarna, acceptance of the Lord as one's only maintainer, avasa rishabhi Krishna, Krishna will protect me, palana. Number 4 is the consciousness of avasya vaksive Krishna. Krishna will surely protect me, which is vishvasa, faith in Krishna, Krishna's palana, protection. Then bhakti anukula matra karayera swekara, execution of acts, but only those acts favorable to pure devotional service. And 6, bhakti pratikul bhava varjanai kirikara, renunciation of conduct averse to pure devotion. So these 6 are elements of surrender, which is a further or a deeper expression of the soul than we find in the Gita principles. All those Gita principles are the way to start toward these things. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. And There are about 10 minutes left after our reflections on these Gita principles, or the principles of Saranagati, and we could try to discuss.
Thank you very much, Hesha Prabhu. If anybody has any questions or comments, feel free. You can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself. You can put it in the chat box. I had one comment and I suppose a question as well, Shesha Prabhu. You had mentioned, I found this very profound, that affection nourishes our ability to tolerate. Sometimes we don't see the connection between those two things, that it strengthens our ability to tolerate. So if we are living in an environment of affection and love, even children who have grown up in an environment, a lot of affection, love, and care, then when they go in the world and somebody says something harsh to them, they actually are more tolerant because they know that there's people at home who love me more than anything else in the world. So I don't care what these people, it doesn't affect me that much. And so I found that very profound. And I think in the context of our movement, this is something that we may want to really invest in some more, because a lot of the times we come into the movement, if we aren't born into it, we come into it with our own baggage of, say, traumas in that area, or we weren't maybe as loved, or perhaps we haven't developed that level of tolerance. So we've been practicing, but still we don't exhibit that tolerance, and by doing so we also don't exhibit as much affection as we really should. And our movement really should be so saturated with affection that people in the world should be just attracted just by that affection that like Prabhupada would do. In the beginning, the initial people didn't even know the philosophy, but just loved the affection coming from Srila Prabhupada. So maybe you want to comment on that and how we could strengthen ourselves as a movement in this area of affection and devotee care and so on, just like that principle.
Okay, well, let me just take you back to my own experience back in the Brahmacharya ashram, which was many, many years ago at this point. But the relationships formed in the Brahmacharya ashram, where we were 24 hours a day, nonstop engaged in the service of Srila Prabhupada, doing things which are often very austere. But we had a brotherhood, a comradeship. We had a loving relationship amongst each other. And those are the relationships that have survived over decades of time in my own life. I look back, and even my best friends today are those that I knew and served with as a brahmachari. Some of the best, I wouldn't say, because I don't want to eliminate the mercy of any Vaishnava that would have any relationship with me, but many, many wonderful relationships are based, and they're formed in service. And so if we want to take, if you ask me personally, I would take that as a basis and try to grow love and loving exchange amongst the devotees from that, by serving together, taking hardships together. I'm just like you all are building a wonderful temple. So it takes all the community to do that. And it's going to be hardship for all the community. But if you do it together, you take it together as a task, then 60 years from now, you'll be able to say, yes, not only do I have the same loving relationships amongst the devotees, but we can look back fondly on what we were able to accomplish in the service of Srila Prabhupada. So loving exchanges does not mean somehow or another loving each other and not doing the service. The service together is where the love will generate. That's my input in that regard. There may be others. I don't claim to be saying the only way here.
Thank you, Prabhu. That makes a lot of sense, because we have to serve anyway, and service accomplishes so many things simultaneously. It feeds the starving soul, it connects us with Krishna, and then when we're struggling through things together as a group, then that group gets stronger. It doesn't always have to be, necessarily just mushy hugs and that sort of thing all the way. When we struggle together, then those bonds are unbreakable.
Right.
So great point. Thank you so much, Prabhu. I saw Vijay Krishna Prabhu, you had your hand up. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, would you like to ask your question? Oh, I think he got disconnected somehow. Oh, there he is. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Yashoda, sorry, Madam Gopal Prabhu, thank you for your service. Shesha Das Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, and thank you for your class. My question is related to one of the items, Amanitva, humility. And in relation to this item, the text you put on the screen was as follows. I will mention just a very short passage. Humility is the jewel of the broad-minded. And I need you to explain this passage because I have no understanding related to this. What is the meaning of humility is the jewel of the broad-minded?
Well, thank you for your question, Prabhu.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
A broad-minded person is different than a kripana, or one who has a miserly intelligence or a miserly outlook or miserly worldview. In other words, such a person is considering their own interests, their own assets, their own happiness. They're miserly in this way, and not giving the broadness of their heart and mind to others. And so just the opposite of that is a Mahatma, or a broad-minded or a great person. And that person's character is marked by humility and service to the Supreme Lord. And that's why it's compared to a jewel. So a broad-minded person has this jewel that he knows is completely the mercy of the Supreme Lord, and upon whom he's completely dependent, as per these 6 ways of surrender that I read at the end of the discourse. And so that's the jewel that makes the world go, not a kripana who thinks that just by being selfish and self-centered, he can be happy, or he can even benefit society in some strange way. Broad-minded people don't think like that, and therefore they have jewel-like personalities which can enrich others with the same quality of humility. That's only going to happen. You can only be broad-minded when you're humble. Humility is strong in your character.
Thank you very much, Shrisha Das Prabhu, for your answer. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Shesha Prabhu. I think that's pretty much all the time we have this evening. So we really appreciate you giving us your valuable time and your in-depth overview of this very important point on the worldview. So in just a moment, we'll allow all the devotees to quick, unmute themselves and offer a quick Hare Krishna to you. But I just want to make our regular announcements on our upcoming week. So as you all know, today was a special day. It's what they call Giving Tuesday. And in Giving Tuesday, what we do is Facebook matches a lot of the donations that you can give if you give it first thing in the morning. And we did receive quite a few donations. So I want to thank all the devotees who participated. But there's still other ways where you can give toward this temple. You can see this is the artist rendering and progress picture right over here. You can see the walls coming right up over the ground. And this is just taken a few weeks ago. And now there's even more walls. So it's really moving right along, this project. So that's with all your help and support. And Amazon Smile is this nice feature of Amazon where, whatever you purchase, a certain percent of it goes toward the temple. So you can sign up for it. It doesn't cost you anything. So please sign up with ISKCON of New Jersey on Amazon Smile. We've already raised thousands of dollars just from this. So it's very, very helpful. And on our channel this week, as always, we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Typically, we have His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. But tomorrow, Jayadvaita Swami is going to be in transit, so he's not going to be available. So we have a last-minute special guest speaker who will be speaking on the second canto, His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu. Those of you who do not know Radhika Raman Prabhu, he's a world-renowned speaker, and he's come to the channel a couple of times, so he'll be speaking tomorrow evening, so please don't miss it. And then on Thursday evening, we'll have Her Grace Madhumati Mataji. Madhumati Mataji is also in Alatra. She's a very senior devotee, and she's also the wife of Shesha Prabhu. And so we have a special week with Shesha Prabhu, and then Madhumati Mataji, and then Friday we'll wrap it up with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj. So a very wonderful week of great nectar. So please join every evening, Monday through Friday, on this channel. With that, I'd like to request Nilmani Prabhu to offer first word of thanks, and then we'll open it up for everyone else.
Thank you, Sesha Prabhu, for such a practical, pragmatic class. Such a great thought to just encapsulate all of the principles of the Bhagavad Gita into 6 key ideas that we can all meditate and think about. So thank you very much for presenting that.
Hare Krishna. And we also have His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj. I just noticed Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj is a pillar of our channel, the inspiration behind the channel, and he is also here in the audience. So a lot of the times he's here to support us as an audience member as well. So thank you, Maharaj, for joining. And everybody else would like to quickly unmute yourself. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Prabhu,
Krishna
Dhanpad.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful class, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Valuable.
Thank you, Maharaj. Nice to see you.
Nice to see your good self. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very
Hare
much.
Krishna Maharaj.
Always welcome back in the Brahmacharya ashram, Shesh Prabhu.
These days. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
His Grace Shesha Prabhu ki jai. So Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj ki jai. Samvita
Jai.
ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanand.
Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.